And we're back.
We're back. We're semi-live.
Semi-live.
I thought you were going to play some cool music to get us going here with all your music
probably
knowledge.
Could. Yeah, it's all it is. The only thing we can play on the show is 21 Savage because it's you and me.
Oh, all right.
But it'll be just quiet enough that you can't hear the lyrics. All you hear is just the bass thumping in the background.
No, just as like an intro,
every
like
now
a
and again.
like a lead-in. Maybe when we figure out the name for the show, we can figure out some theme music and we'll play an intro there.
Yeah, we can do that. In the meantime, you just hear 21 bump in the background. Like, yeah, 21.
Okay, 21. Probably my favorite thing is we went down to Pans last year, and we were playing that the whole time, right? And I'd heard of him, but I'd never really listened to him. And I was like, man, this is on point. Just driving around during the competition, all that stuff, sitting around. I mean, hours on hours just watching people and, sitting up in the stands listening to music. And then when we came back, I don't know if it was you or me, but I think we played a little bit of it for Drew. And Drew pulls me aside and he's like, I don't think 21 Savage knows just that he writes the perfect music for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. I don't think he has any idea. He doesn't have any idea. But if you hear that music in the room, all of a sudden, I'll roll. I'll do one more.
Yeah. And I think, shortly thereafter, he requested that. Like we were training and something else was playing. And he's like, I'm going to need that trap music to get me going here while I'm training. So. All right, guys. So episode number 2. Last week we got together and it wasn't anything crazy. Saturday I was driving home. Went out to get some groceries. Coming home, I texted Rob. I said, "Hey, wouldn't it be fun to do something like this?" And he said, "Hell yeah!" And we set a time and we recorded, and we didn't really think anything beyond that. But it's kind of turned into something where it seems like you guys enjoy it. So we appreciate all the good feedbacks, and we're just going to keep going as long as you guys are sending us stuff and keep giving us those comments. Keep texting Rob all your stuff. We read through them all. He sends them to me, and they're all great ideas. And let us know what you want to see on the show, right?
Yeah, exactly. So ultimately, we want to be able to have some time to be able to basically replicate what we would be doing anyway. Because
just I look
at my watch. It's like 5 o'clock. I got to leave for the gym anyway.
Right.
I'd be finding you, be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then we just start talking. So now instead we're just like firing up Microsoft Teams and recording what we'd be doing anyway. It's a really big change because it basically just means it's easier. I don't have to get my car and drive to the gym, but I don't get to train. So silver linings.
Yeah, but the plan is going forward, we'd like to have Professor on, some other coaches on. I know Rob, you talked about maybe even having a call in or where we could have people do like a live question type thing where we just get together and just kind of like we're sitting on the wall after training and we're just going back and forth. So I like it. Let's get started. So what's keeping you sane during this the Rona shutdown 2020?
Man, first of all, it's really, really hard not training. And it's somebody who I got pretty deep down the rabbit hole of jiu-jitsu immediately. So I've been training about 5.5 years, I suppose. And it's a big part of my day. It's a big part of my week, and not the routine of training is very ingrained. I've realigned a lot of my priorities in life to be able to train as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
My wife is very patient with me because she understands oh yeah, you got to go do the jiu-jitsu thing. Okay, yeah, see you in 3 hours. And she's gotten pretty used to that. And so the hardest part is just how do you replace something that's that big with just your day-to-day life? I mean, there's only so much Netflix. There's a lot of Netflix that's out there,
right,
but it doesn't do the thing.
Right.
And I've always kind of done a lot of stuff at home, solo training, and I've got a grappling dummy and some small mats just to, you get stuck inside or you got an idea for something or you see a cool video and you're like, oh, I wonder if I could do that or try something. So I've been trying to do that a little bit more, focus a lot on, you and I were both deep in a training camp to go out to Pans again this year.
Right.
So trying to take a little time to recover, and that's kind of the one, if there is a benefit, the one benefit is getting a little bit of recovery time, because I was I was pretty beat up. I was just texting you right now, like, hey, by the way, I think you popped my foot like a couple months ago.
Which
I'm
is
really
not
feeling
true.
it
It's not true. We haven't trained together for like 6 months or 6 weeks.
You're like, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's that side. You like to do that one.
I'm sure you were just sitting on it weird at your desk, and now your ankle hurts. And now, but it's my fault. It's my problem.
Yeah, exactly. So I blame Matt for everything. It's like, oh, I get my hips bad. Yeah, it's because Matt smashed me. That's what happened. That's the big thing right now is just trying to like doing a lot of yoga stuff. Coach Jason's been awesome. He's been helping me out with some new workout routines and some things just to try to, keep I'm old, man. I'm getting there. I gotta feel old, so I gotta keep the wheels moving. Otherwise, I'm a this rusted out old Jeep, man. I gotta keep going. You sit me in the garage for too long. I don't know if it's gonna start again.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if it was you telling me that or somebody else was telling me that. Like one of the thankful things is you actually get some time off. Where man, going into Pans, I was beat up. I was beat up bad. I had a bunch of small nagging injuries. Where now definitely time to heal. It's not the time I wanted, but it's nice to be able to heal a little bit, heal the body, and be ready to go. But it's entirely too long. You got any good free stuff that's out there?
Oh man, there's so much. That's one of the really cool things about the jiu-jitsu community right now is like there's so much interesting stuff that people are putting out. There's you go on Instagram or Facebook and there's all kinds of, live content. People are doing classes and seminars and some of it's, donation based. You can just like fire up Facebook or fire up, Instagram and look at live and there'd be world-class people just teaching whatever right now. I mean, and even then, a lot of those guys are putting out a lot of content anyway. So, I mean, if you got the time and you don't have anywhere to be, I mean, there's so much stuff you can be getting in front of your eyeballs and trying to, get it into your brain. Cause I mean, it's just staggering. And, BJJ Fanatics has been putting out, Bernardo Faria, put out basically you get one of his DVDs for free with a promo code. Tom DeBlas is doing the same thing. John Danaher put out his solo drills, stuff you can do at home and kind of fundamental movements. And, you get the microscopic detail of Professor Danaher, going down. All right, this is how you shrimp out and why, like that, which is, and it's interesting to have one, that the content's there, but two, you also have the time because it's like, well, it's, you're stuck at home. You can't really go
what
anywhere.
Else are you gonna do? Yeah,
What you gonna do? Might as well learn more. Get some of that classroom time in. So I've been trying to consume some of that where I can. I've actually got a couple of days off from work coming up this weekend, which will probably be doing a lot of that, sitting here and looking instead of this direction, looking at this other computer screen and watching some of these videos because we're gonna hold up here for a little while. What about you?
Man, it's I almost find that it's too much. It's too much choices, right? So it's like, where, all these different free sites and, who should I be watching? I love Keenan Cornelius and more so that he's a personality, but I like watching his live feeds. But I find that it tends to get drone on a little bit, if that makes sense. And so it's kind of like the same thing over and over. I kind of like how he did he did some where him and his buddies dressed up in street clothes.
I was going to ask you about that.
That's
video,
awesome.
That's like,
because then they're fighting each other.
They're just wearing like sweatsuits.
Yeah.
And then they just have a roll, but like, they're like trying to choke each other with the hood.
And so, it's this interesting dynamic where it's him and then a couple guys that came up with him. So they're probably world-class guys too, right? I think one's a brown belt, one's another black belt. And then they have this random guy, Tony. And I don't know exactly what he does, if he's just another buddy that they have or what. But they all put on the sweats and just beat the shit out of Tony. And they're choking each other. And, Keenan's been doing a lot of judo. So he's judo sweeping everybody, grabbing on. He's doing the same lapel stuff. And so it's just kind of, that personality that comes out, like just like is on his podcast. But I got to tell you, funny, you brought up Danaher. One of my first DVDs that I got when I first started was Roy Dean. And it was like, what it takes to be a blue belt or how to become a blue belt. There was something to that degree. I don't remember the exact title right now, but it was so monotone. And he'd play this kind of, soft, gentle music in the background that I would watch probably like 2.5 techniques and I'd fall asleep on my couch. And then I'd wake up to the end of the, you know, how the credits roll at the end. And I'm like, God damn it, I missed it again. I got to start it over. And then I'd fall asleep again. And that's where I get with Danaher's. You know, probably like 10 minutes in, I'm like, man, this guy's killing me. I'm going to fall asleep here. But I got on, so Henzo, through his company, I think it's called Galler, they're doing a free month, right? And so I went on there and I was like, oh, yeah, I like Henzo stuff. It's always good. Well, you can go in and their instructors do online stuff, right? But he has stuff on there where he's not really an instructor so much as he's just a celebrity that drops in from time to time because he's the namesake, right? But he's made it where he doesn't have to coach. But every once in a while, he just drops in and he's like, I'm going to teach class today. And they're like, absolutely. This is going to be a show. Everybody gather around.
Yeah.
Well, so he started doing live feeds and they'll pop him in on the live feeds. Absolute gold, man, every time. And, you know, I was talking with Professor George about it. And I think it's, you know, it's the entertainment factor where you not only get the jiu-jitsu, but you also get the personality that is Henzo. And he always has a story to tell. You know, he's got a nickname for everybody. He's got some story to tell. They brought some guy in. They call him Midnight. He's apparently some, you know, famous percussionist, and now he's a brown belt under him. So they were talking about that, and I was like, man, awesome. And he just had me wrapped up for an entire hour. I was like, yeah, where do I get more of this? Right? Yeah, absolutely. All right, tell me what you're excited about with jiu-jitsu. Anything exciting right now?
Training again, number one.
Trying to get back to training.
Like looking at every announcement that our governor is making and trying to like do reverse math of when I can get back on the mats. And
right.
You know, that's kind of the biggest thing. I think right now, like, I don't know. It's so everything is so in the air. You know, I'm still trying to think like competition wise, like, okay, if things got back to normal in 6 months, what would be the next competition that I could go do?
Yeah.
You know, I'm still trying to reverse engineer potential situations for that. But just like looking out, I mean, I was really bummed, man, because like Pans in particular, I was so excited because I'm like a huge Mikey Musumeci like fanboy, and he's going to compete at heavyweight. Mikey is like 135 pounds and was going to compete at heavyweight at the same event, which I was like, okay, sign me up. I want to see him. I'll see anybody in the building. Like, let's go. And Rafael Lovato Jr. was going to be competing for the first in like multiple years in the gi. And so like a lot of those things I was really excited about. And then there were some other matchups, and you know, like there's the Mikey versus Erberth you know, super fight that was supposed to happen too. That got canceled. Like there was a ton of stuff in the hopper that jiu-jitsu nerds were like, you know, clamoring for. And,
let's go.
Oh, that's kind of nixed. So now we got to try and figure out, okay, well, what's going to happen? I know they just did like a Submission Underground thing with Kevin Casey and Craig Jones to like nobody. It's like they just like just opened up somebody's gym, and it was like I don't think it was that long of a match. They just showed up, you know, Craig Jones by heel hook, and then they, you know, raise a hand, and they're out of there. All right, see you guys later.
Yeah, right.
So
ready to go.
I don't know if they're going to keep doing stuff like that or what, but we'll see. It's everything.
Yeah, just to keep everybody going, right? Keep everybody interested.
Yeah, just taking it day by day. I'm just like, I got a Grappler's Guide lifetime membership just recently, which is
you were talking about that.
It's like one of the best deals I've ever seen. And I don't understand how they can do it because there's a lot of content on there, and it was like $87, and that's it. You're just
for life.
You're in for life. Like this is my coupon, and I just get in. And if they add new stuff on there, all right, cool. You get that too.
Right.
And then like in the Facebook group, the guy that admins that said that people are still trying to like pirate it and like put it up on torrent sites. And the guy's like, what? Why? Like it's $87 for everything. Like
forever.
And then you don't have to do it, and you could just download it for free.
Right.
And or no, not for free, but it's, you know, you have your initial investment and then you just get it.
Right.
But it's, yeah, man, there's so much content on there. And like, I'm just trying to figure out, at least some of those videos are small where it's like, you know, a couple minutes of like a little technique here and there. And I can just go in there and watch a few of them and go back later. Cause it's daunting, man. There's so much content out there.
Right. Yeah. And how do you digest all that? Right. All right, let's get into it here. So I was thinking for the second podcast, you know, what I'd like to do is I was actually talking with a couple people about our first one that we did, and they're like, yeah, you know, that was good conversation where a new student wouldn't know that stuff, and probably we have some students who've been with us for a long time who probably don't know that stuff, right? Or maybe they thought about it, but they don't necessarily know our opinion as coaches on that. So what I'd like to do on this one is I'd like to walk through and just talk about a new student going to your class. And so you and Coach Kelsey are the primary fundamentals class instructors. So I'm a new student, or maybe even a newer student, maybe 1 or 2 stripes. I've been coming to your class for a little bit, and I want to walk through that. So, but let's start out first. How long have you been teaching?
Yeah, so I started, it'll be, 2 years in May, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Today.
We originally started the coaches group, I think, 2 years in May.
Right. So how that all started was we were kind of in need of some coaches. And so we picked 3 of you. And that was was it May? Maybe it was August.
Yeah.
But it was right around summertime, right? And it was you, Drew, and Jeremy.
Yeah. So I actually started my job and the coaches program on the same day. Because I started a new job at work that Monday, and we started the first coaches meeting was like the Sunday before that, and then the first class we were actually like assistant coaches at was that day.
Right. And how did we start out again? I mean, you guys started out where you basically just you were like my assistants. You shadowed me a little bit in the class, and then I would just give you stuff to do in the class. So we would go over certain techniques, and then that was your class to start out at, right?
Yeah. And a lot of times too, and I think partly being built like a small mannequin, like just like a skinny person who's relatively easy to be moved around, I get used as a demonstration partner a lot. So the official term is an uke, which is the Japanese word for the partner. And, I think, and that's a really awesome experience too. And it's been really helpful for me in learning, because as someone's explaining how a move is done to a group of people, you're also getting a unique experience, because you get to feel what it's like as they're increasing pressure or leverage or changing things. And it's super helpful, especially as you're starting to learn that. When we started the coaches program, that was myself, Drew, and Jeremy, two other really good friends of mine. And, we would kind of break out techniques, it'd be like 3 different options for a pass, and I could show option 1, and then Drew would show option 2, and then Jeremy would show option 3. And it kind of gave us all kind of bite-sized things to be able to learn. So, okay, I need to just show my portion of it, but you get to see all 3 of them. So you're helping your other teammate coaches learn their techniques too. So you're learning all of the techniques, but then getting kind of bite-sized things that you can go and demonstrate to a group as you get more comfortable, talking to people or explaining the technique, maybe even getting to field questions or clarifying points or something like that. And it was really helpful for me to have that kind of structure, because you're getting multiple repetitions for things, and then you're also getting an opportunity to go and essentially perform it and then get direct feedback right afterwards of like, yeah, you did that, but you forgot like these 2 steps. Those are kind of and I'd be like, what, seriously? And like, yeah. If I was going to do that again, I'd do it, differently.
Right.
It's like, and maybe other people may not notice that in the moment, but getting that direct feedback from somebody, it helps you understand the positions more, helps you demonstrate things, and then ultimately, I think trying to explain simple or kind of complex things simply to a group of people.
Absolutely.
It's definitely an ongoing process where, there's always things that, we're trying to improve, and you've been great about giving me feedback on, like, hey, yeah, you could tighten that up a little bit, Stuff like, yeah, that was good. Yeah, just take like 90% of that, just to keep 10, and then cut the rest of it out of there.
Man, going back, it's, I've been doing this, I think 11 years now, and I think just like any good relationship, there's an uke and instructor relationship, and you just work really well with some people and you don't work well with others. Right. And that now that you've been instructing there's people that I've used as instructors, and usually it's pretty random. I try to choose somebody who's either been to the class a lot or is a higher rank. But a lot of times I'll use somebody and they just don't really have a feel for what I'm doing. So that's why it's hard. But there's people in classes that are just natural. I'll take them on like they're, their second day, when it's all second day people, and they just they roll with the punches, and you're like, man, I'm going to use you forever. Sorry, but every time that you're in class, you're going to be my uke now, because we just have this natural thing that we're going through. So it's absolutely, there's something to that. So, and you do a good job of that. I mean, we've always had this like organic thing where you just understand what I'm doing, even if you don't understand what I'm doing, but you're not trying to resist me or anything. You let me show the moves, and then I can always walk you through what I need to walk you through as far as resistance and things like that. But we're not fighting against each other, right?
Right. And you've never put sleep in like a triangle where you're like explaining and you have it like 80% and everybody can see like, oh, is he gonna go? No. And you're like, oh wait, yeah, I'll give Rob a break here because I'm explaining this one part but not finishing it.
Right.
Which sometimes will happen.
Man, that happened to me. It's been probably like 3 years, but Professor George was demonstrating triangle chokes, and he kept going through, and he would like lock it down, and he, it was one of those things where he demoed it like 4 or 5 times, and then he asked if anybody wanted to see it again. And some jackhole was like, yeah, I'll see it 3 more times. Absolutely. And so,
yeah. You could do it like tighter though.
Can we see him tap again? And then that was probably first 15 minutes of class. I don't remember the rest of class because it just like lack of oxygen. I don't know if I blacked out or what. And I was like, we probably shouldn't do that. And then lo and behold, I haven't done that until yesterday when I almost choked out Professor when we were doing the live feed. I had that Brado on him, and I didn't realize it was that tight. He starts tapping. I was like, man, I'm halfway through my conversation here, man. I didn't even get to the last 3 points. But, it happens, right? So, so let's call it like a year, right? So you started out, I think we hopped you guys around a little bit, where you started out as you shadowed me in fundamentals, but then, and this is my opinion, and I think it's shared with Professor George as well, is fundamentals, and maybe you have, after a year, you have an opinion about this too, is fundamentals is probably the hardest class to teach, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's hard, not necessarily because the techniques are hard, but it's hard because there's so many things going on where you have to create a good environment, right? You have to be able to take somebody who has no idea, for the most part, about jiu-jitsu. Certainly we got people who come in who they pick it up right away, but vast majority of people, some of our best students, and not right away, of course, but after probably a year, some of our best students, I tell them, as like, hey, I remember your first class, and I don't know how you got in the door, because the amount of coordination you need to, and strength, you need to open up the door and get inside and put on a gi. I don't know how you did it your first class.
Yeah.
But it's just basic stuff that people should know, but they don't know. And so being able to take somebody through that and say, hey, this is what a somersault needs to look like, right? No, we can't do that. We got to roll over here, and just having that patience, it takes a very special kind of person. And being able to explain, take something as simple as a triangle and being able to explain it to, 10 different people on how to do the same thing, right? It's absolutely. So, the hardest class to teach. So you've been doing it. I think what we did, going back to, is you started out in the fundamentals and you did intermediate for a little while.
Yeah.
Right?
So
I think you and Drew split up classes, right?
Yep. Yeah. So we would do like a Monday, Wednesday split for level 2. So I did level 2 for about 6 months. So we did probably like 6 months where it was like helping classes. And then that fall started teaching like a full class that was level 2. And that was mostly like at the time it was a lot of kind of series based things where it's like, hey, here's a few attacks from like single X or passing into side control, and here's some things that you can do to attack from knee on belly. So it's like kind of attack sequences. And then we moved over to doing, I picked up the 6 o'clock fundamentals class Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We switched over to that probably, I want to say, about a year now. And I love it because the fundamentals class was the first class that I took, and it kind of, the structure of the warm up, the kind of structure of how we align the curriculum and the focuses, I I find myself, and you kind of told me this too, is like you kind of get obsessed with it because it's trying to explain the simplest things to anybody that can walk in the door.
Right.
And if you take like public speaking or any sort of like educating kind of training, a lot of times you're focusing on what's the simplest way you can explain something to the lowest common denominator in the room. So the person with the least amount of experience, can they understand what you're saying for at any given time? And sometimes you're going to miss the mark, but that's always the goal, is to make sure that every person in the room can understand at a basic level what you're trying to convey, and then, or at least get them 80% of the way there. If somebody's brand new, you can show it a couple of times. Most people will kind of get the general idea and they'll start drilling it and kind of workshopping it, and then you can go over it and give, I like to use analogies for a lot of things. So trying to explain something even more simply by relating it to something else that's already known, because most people that walk in the door, if they have any idea about what jiu-jitsu is, it's primarily from MMA, Joe Rogan's podcast, or they looked it up online and sounded interesting. Right. That's when I ask people like, hey, what brought you in? Usually one of those three things. Oh, hey, I really like MMA and I always wanted to try it. Listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, or I looked you guys up online. Looked like a good workout.
Right.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
And, other than that, you really kind of have to bring familiar things into the conversation to help them kind of put the pieces together. And it's, I think it's just an ongoing process. And, I think being able to explain that stuff and be patient. A lot of folks that don't know, in my previous life, I spent a lot of time playing guitar. I played in a lot of bands. I'm in a studio right now with a bunch of instruments all over the place, but I used to teach guitar. And I actually have some instructional DVDs out on how to play some things on guitar. And I used to teach private lessons, and teaching guitar to a small child is really hard because they're not paying attention to you. They think guitars are cool, but they don't have the patience to be able to, sit still for a second and do something. And that helped me a ton in being patient and trying to explain stuff and get people excited about a thing. I use some of those skills sometimes on grownups, where, because sometimes you have to like, hey, look over here. All right, cool. I'm trying to show you something. Cool. Pay attention. I suppose you got to do that too. But yeah, I'm really grateful for the opportunity that you guys wanted me to coach, because it's something I was really interested in doing, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity, because man, that's it's not a chore for me to show up to the gym. It's like, all right, I'm looking at my watch of like, when can I leave and how early can I get there?
When it was on me to pick, and obviously there wasn't there were students to pick from, and it's like, all right, who do I want to bring in? And I figured that Drew is just natural, right? He's got a natural thing. I never thought Jeremy would teach, but there was this question mark on you about, and I was like, but I've seen him. He's got something, right? He's dedicated enough where even if he's not good right away, he'll put in the time, he'll put in the energy. He's got the notebook. He's always writing in the notebook. Like, that's what I want is, I want a student of the game, because I can teach him the techniques, right? And, people, you got this natural thing about you where, like, there's a reason you're a good musician. There's a reason, because you're an entertainer, right? And so, like, watching that class, that fundamentals class, is you're doing such a good job with the environment and just connecting with the students. And, man, it's awesome to see where, a year later, it's like, man, great decision, right? Great decision having you as a coach. So I'm glad that you put in the time and the work and do all that stuff. I got to tell you, though, and this isn't about you. This is about Drew, and this has really upset me. And you'll probably appreciate this story more.
Here it is.
And maybe some of the students. But it's just eating at me. So I know the cider's charm, right? I get it. But most people get to know
those of you that don't know, the cider's charm is a known thing.
Oh, man.
Mr. Ciders has a face that gets reactions in all 50 states. Yep. Everybody on the street, doesn't matter. He's a charmer, that one.
So I should have told this story on the first one. So Joey Mack, right? We most of you guys know Joey Mack. You can look him up. he's a big guy. He's just as big as me. He's got just as big a neck as me. Right? He's kind of got a baby face, but I went to visit him one time. This is when he first moved down to Colorado, and we went to his local gym. It was out in Fort Collins. They were putting on a seminar, and we walked in before the seminar, and somehow, we came together, but we got split up. I don't know if he went in first or, whatever, but he walked in probably a couple minutes before me. And so, or maybe I walked in first. It was something where I saw him walk in or saw the reaction of him walking in. And then there was the reaction of me walking in. So he walks into this place and business as usual, nothing. I mean, music's playing, people are rolling on the mats, warming up, whatever. And I walk in, and it's like, a scene out of a movie where the record slips, right? And everybody just stares at the guy walking in the door. And I'm like, man, am I going to have to fight everybody in here? Like, what's going on? Like, is this Fight Club or what are we doing? And just everybody just like, what's this guy's deal? I'm like, come on, man. I even asked Joey about it. Everybody's high-fiving Joey, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just, I was like, you and I look the same. We look the exact same. You have a little bit of a baby face, and I guess I have like a permanent scalp, but I don't know.
You have aggressive cop energy. Yeah. That's what it's just in your bones where it's like it's like there's like this evolutionary thing that people got like hair stands up on the back of their necks because like a jaguar was in the bushes 10,000 years ago. You have the same reaction on human beings now.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's this guy's story? Are you looking at me, man? Hey.
I suppose it doesn't help with the ears now. Over the years, the cauliflower ear has come in.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. So I was at work the other day, and I was driving around, and we were looking for somebody, right? So I was in my mode, so I'm kind of scanning, doing my thing, not really paying attention. And one of my coworkers drove by. They waved at me, and later they're like, "Hey, you didn't wave back." I was like, "Yeah, I saw you, but like I was in cop mode. Like I didn't have time for that." So I call it shark eyes. Like I was just staring shark eyes into people, just like looking people down. Just that, hey, no, you need to knock that off. You need to. But anyways, going back to the story. So I demo my techniques, and I've been doing this forever, right? So I demo my techniques, and then I ask if anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions? And most people don't, right? And this kind of organic thing that's happened is in our Muay Thai class, they used to have the instructor used to say, any questions? I'd say, no, sir. And then they do this very militant thing, right? And that kind of bled over because we had students that did both. And so now it's, I brought back the 1, 2, 3 clap. And so it took a while for that to come through. But now I say, hey, does everybody understand? Does anybody have any questions? No, sir. All right, on 3, 1, 2, 3, right? Nobody ever asked me any questions. And I always figured, it's probably because people are nervous. They don't really know what to ask. But they probably weren't paying attention or some, combination of that, right? And I just figured this was the way it was because nobody ever asked George any questions either, right? And that's all I knew. So I let Drew teach, a class one time, and just like you and Jeremy, and he's going through and he's demoing his technique, and it's like very natural. And then at the end, he says, "Does anybody have any questions?" Every single person raised their hand to ask Drew a question. It was unbelievable. I was like, hold on a second. I had to stop the class. I said, what is happening? You all have questions all of a sudden?
I remember that.
And it's like that picture of Jesus, and all the disciples around him, just like, oh, yes, we have questions. So he started calling him the blonde Jesus. And it's like, man.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's my cross to bear, I guess. I don't know. All right. Great. So let's get into it, man. So talk me through. I'm a new student, or I'm a newer student, and I'm coming to one of your classes. Like, what are the expectations? What should I know coming in? Or, how are you going to sell me that I should, as a new student, that I should come in and take a class from you?
Sure. So first thing, so I teach, my fundamentals class is Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 p.m. So class starts at 6. I tell everybody, if it's your first class, try to get there a half hour early. Just if you can. It's half hour gives you plenty of time to hang out, do what you need to do. As a general rule, if you get to the gym 15 minutes early, you should have plenty of time to be able to change, come out on the mat, stretch, hang out, chat with folks, whatever you need to do, and then we get started at 6. Me personally, I always try to get to places early, especially for jiu-jitsu, just, in case you forget something. It takes you a little while to get dressed, change, whatever it is. So that's usually what I recommend, folks. When you come to a 6 o'clock class, it's pretty structured in terms of the warm-up that we do, kind of the structure of how we lay out the techniques and the training. It's something that you and I have been working on for the entire time. Is trying to make sure that we talk about this a lot. We're trying to deliver what we call a perfect hour. Like, if you come in, you get as much value and technique and fun out of that 60 minutes of time as possible. And that's always what we're trying to strive for, and what we're trying to, that's our goal. And the way that we kind of work that out is we have our structured warm up, and that's something you can do by yourself. I've actually do that when I travel for work or anything. That's actually usually how I warm up in a gym. So people are like, what the hell is this dude doing? He's like throwing his legs up in the air and doing weird yoga. And like, is he listening to 21 Savage? And I'm like, yes, I am doing all of those things. Save your judgment.
Man, and you have like the opposite, like, because you're clearly a wispy boy, right? And,
yeah.
It's like that.
You play in a band? Oh yeah, yeah. What kind of music is it? That's what I get. Nobody's ever aggressive with me. Even with the neck tattoos and everything like that. Like, yeah. No, I get it. You probably work in a coffee shop or something, right? Yeah, but you're not a threat.
It's like that scene from Office Space where the guy's driving into his job and he's listening to the gangster rap, and the gangsters pull up next to him and he's like, okay, lock. Oh.
Yeah, no one's getting their hackles up over me.
Right.
Like, oh, look at this guy, look at trouble. No.
Anyway, so you're doing the warm up. You use this warm up all the time, yeah.
Yeah. So, and the warm up is just like our structured, fundamental movements. Especially if it's your first class and you show up early, there's a few of them that I'll show you right away, so that you can have a little bit of a better experience. If you've never seen any of this stuff before, we can walk through a stand up and base. We can walk through your front break fall and your rear break fall, just so hey, these are some things that a couple of details would be helpful for you if you're going to try and do this live. But otherwise, you're going to have to kind of watch the demo, and then you'll perform it, and then I'll try to give you as many coaching tips as I can while I'm still running the whole class. So we go through, we do our warm up. It's usually about 15 minutes. And then we usually will do some kind of technique, kind of stand up, or, we might do some sort of guard retention or something like that for a little bit, our techniques of the day, and then we'll do some training towards the end. And that's usually kind of the structure that we've got. Some things when some folks, especially if it's their first class or they've been coming for a while, they associate martial arts as having like lots of rules. And, there's kind of the traditions, and like for me, you can call me Coach Rob. I'm a purple belt. It's totally fine. You just call me Coach Rob. That's fine. You just call me Rob. That's also fine. Usually, if someone has a black belt, in most gyms they're called professor. I know that there are some folks like Robert Drysdale. He's multiple degree black belt. Does not like getting called professor. He tells everybody call him coach. But that's his choice. For us. Sign of respect for someone they spent 10 years getting something. It's like if somebody has their doctorate in something, you call that person doctor. I approach the same thing. If there's black belts, I'm going to call them professor unless they tell me otherwise. Right. Do you approach that any differently?
Well, I think this goes back to what we talked about last time. Is it kind of depends upon where you are, right? So I'm certainly not a black belt yet, but professor, it doesn't. I don't think I would force people to call me that. And in fact, if anybody did call me that, I would say, hey, you can call me coach. I like coach, or you can just call me Matt. Most people call me that, right? I don't think that would be something that I would hold anybody to. And if they messed it up, it'd just be what it was. But I've also been to schools where, they call all brown belts coach, right? And so I was visiting at a school, and this guy kept saying, hey, coach, hey, coach, hey, coach. And, I'm just, putting tape on my fingers, doing my thing. And he comes over to me. He's like, hey, man, I'm talking to you. And I was like, who are you talking to? Like, you're calling me coach. He's like, yeah, because you're a brown belt. And I'm like, what? No, I'm not. No, I'm just a brown belt. I'm not teaching the class or anything. So, okay. But, again, like we talked about before, I think erring on the side of just being a good person and understanding those rules is when you go to other schools, just talking, when you come in, showing up early, that's great advice. And just saying, hey, you can kind of give me the lay of the land here. Like, how should I refer to black belts? Because I think it is very strict. I know in the kids class, they like to refer to black belts as professor and brown belts as coach. And, that's how they want the kids to address them, because it's a discipline thing, right?
Yep.
And it's like, absolutely, that's appropriate, right? But if you maybe were in the adult class and you brought your kid to the class and then you went to address one of the coaches and you called them wrong, I mean, there's a thing there, right? Where you're not really representing what the coaches want in front of the kids. So, just to round that off, I think best practice is just to ask, or like you said, default and just call them professor. And if they don't like it, or if they don't want that, they'll correct you, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. One of the other things people ask about too, and especially if you're coming in and Shehan waves you over like, hey Rob, we got a new person. The first thing I'm going to let you know about is the bowing.
Absolutely.
Because we don't Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really probably on the informal side of martial arts, just given kind of Brazilian surfer culture. It's pretty laid back. The way that I explain it to folks when they come in is, you before you step on the mat, you bow towards the logo and the banner as a sign of respect. And when you leave, you also turn, face the banner, and bow. I just explain it like it's like a toll bridge, toll in, toll out, and it's just a simple sign of respect that it gets ingrained, and something that even at home, like any other mats, it kind of becomes a muscle memory where you have to be like, there's I've got some in my house, and sometimes it's one of those things where like you kind of have to stop yourself a little bit, like, wait, should I be doing this? Wait, no, this isn't at home. But it's just like
you should absolutely you should. Why not, right? Because you're showing respect. How I explain it is I'm showing respect to the training area, right? Yeah. And so, we all come in with our different things, our different professions, our different whatever, but we're coming in and we're showing respect to the training area, right? Not necessarily any one person, but, let's bow, let's show respect to the training area and the people we're about to train with. And let's talk about it right now, right? So we have the bowing, but then when we get into traditional martial arts, we have where you bow to each other, right? Where over the summer, I took some judo classes at a local judo school, and I wasn't indoctrinated in all the bowing that needs to take place, because that's a very formal martial art, right? And the guy the coach kind of got after me the first class. He's like, hey, man, you got to bow like 37 times before we even get started here, and you only did 35. So normally I make guys do push-ups for that. And I'm like, what do you mean a bow? Like, why are we bowing all the time? But it's that formal sign of respect, right? So now instead of we bow onto the training area, but now you and I are going to roll, right? Or maybe you and I are going to do a technique. How do we kind of signify like, hey, let's have a good training. Let's have a good fight, right? Things may get heated here, but at the end of the day, there's always that mutual respect. Because I think what happens is a lot of times people forget this is a combat sport, right? And, we frown upon punching and kicking, and, there's none of that in the sport. Right. But from time to time, you might get that where somebody cranks on your foot a little too hard. Probably not intentional. Right. But it just kind of happens, with the intensity of the sport. Right. And so at the end of it, we're always friends. So, talk us through that. What is the Brazilian handshake?
So Brazilian handshake is, I'm going to try and demonstrate this, right? It's a slap and then a bump. Right.
Right. Universal.
So, yeah, see people just like slap bump. Sometimes you'll see the slap, and then one guy will like do the second slap. That always annoys me when people do it. Like slap and bump. How lazy are you? Just give me the bump. I always think that. And when I see guys do it in high level competition, I'm like, come on, just slap and a bump. What are we doing?
Right.
But it's just a simple sign of respect. And like, so I saw an interesting video the other day where Mikey Musumeci was on somebody's back and getting ready to sink in a choke. He's just like viciously choking this guy. High level competition, right? Black belt. It's like a semifinal match. It's like there's a lot on the line. So you can tell there's like this intensity in his eyes. As soon as the guy taps, it's like a spell goes away from him and his eyes completely change. And he goes from I'm submitting this person to, hey, are you okay? And it was just an instant. And that's a really interesting way to show what jiu-jitsu is like, where there is this level, this mutual intensity, but it's also coming from a place of care,
right?
Where you're looking out and there's mutual trust. And that's when you're submitting, that the other person is respecting that tap to release, so that there isn't potential damage, so that there isn't after effects. Sometimes that it's going to happen where someone's going to crank on something, or they get it just right, and maybe somebody will go out, or there's an injury. But you respect the tap, and seeing that, like, I've never really seen that before. You can see the person's expression completely change from super intense to like a genuine care, like, oh, are you all right? Especially from.
Didn't he just do an interview though, and they were asking him about like what he thinks about when he competes, and he's like, yeah, usually what happens is I'm super nervous, I'm freaking out, and then we go out and tap hands, and then like I go to some dark place, and and then I usually like I wake up when the person taps, and I'm like, oh, cool, did I win? Oh, I won, hey. Which is kind of scary, but that's right.
It's a terrifying little gremlin, man.
So so continue on. So we're bowing. We got the Brazilian handshake. What else?
So some folks have asked, like, hey, what happens if I'm late? What happens if I get stuck at work, or it takes me a little longer to drop off my kids, something like that? What if I'm late? Can I still come to class? And do I have to ask to come onto the mat? Do I have to ask to leave? I think it's always something you want to check with the instructor if you're coming to that class. Regularly checking in with them, because there's some things that you might not think about that have an impact to that, like how many people we have, whether or not there's groups of 3. Because sometimes it's actually awesome if a late person comes in, because you could relieve someone who's a group of 3. And I'll say, sometimes people show up early for the level 2 class, and I'll be like, hey, I've got a group of 3. Can you jump in with them real quick, especially if it's one of my buddies? And it's nice because it helps get some of our other students more reps, because otherwise they're working group of 3. So something like that. The way that I tell people is like, get to class. If you're 5 minutes late to class, I will probably say hello to you while I'm doing my work. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? CJ sighting or something like that. Because like I want to acknowledge that, yes, you're welcome. Come to my class. And if you jump in when you can, that's cool. We'll make room for you. Like we'll figure it out. But that's how I approach it. Some folks, some different schools are like, it's doors are locked. Like you're either, if you're on time, you're late. If you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. Stuff like that. I don't really approach it like that, because I like to just have more people in my class, and I want people to feel like, I can make 40 minutes of class. Yeah, come in. Like, and if else, flag me down if we're doing something. Like, let me know. Like, hey, is it cool if I jump in? And yeah, more often than not, unless there's something really specific that we're doing where I just literally can't get you in, then I'll let you know. But otherwise, if you're 5 minutes late to class for some extenuating reason, just jump in the warm up.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good. It's just a general rule is to check in with the instructor, at least, at our school, coming in and just saying, hey, I'm a few minutes late. Great. Let me pair you up with somebody, just so we can get good pairings. But then again, it comes back to this thing of other schools do things differently. And, generally at schools that I've been to outside of our own is if you're late, you have to wait on the edge of the mat. Right. And then you have to ask permission to go into the class, which isn't a big thing. Right. And again, this is just you asking questions when you go to visit somewhere. And then one that messed me up, man, is I'm so used to this laid back culture of like, you just go get a drink of water when you want a drink of water, or, man, if you need to leave the mat, I got to go to the bathroom. I'm not going to talk or interrupt anybody. I'm just going to go, going back to this judo thing, right? Where I left the mat without asking for permission. Right. And I got talked to about it. He's like, no, you don't just get to leave the mat. Like, you need to ask my permission. And there's like this official bowing out sequence. And I was like, man, it just seems like a lot. Right. But we just had a multi-school training. We opened up a training. This was, I don't know, when was it? Probably Veterans Day, right? So it's been a few months, but we had a bunch of other schools invited. We were doing what's the word I'm looking for? Fundraiser. So we're doing like a fundraising thing, right? And
which
so
was really cool. That was awesome.
Yeah, very cool. And there's another local instructor there, and so I'm running the training, and we're doing an up down out style thing, and he pulls me aside and he goes, hey, are my students leaving the mat without asking you? And I said, I think there's a bunch of people leaving the mat without asking me, but it is what it is. And he goes, no. Like, we don't do that at my school. Like, that's just an expectation, is they ask me before they leave, because I want to make sure they're leaving for the right reasons. Right. And I was like, okay, I can understand that. He's like, so you need to let me know if they're leaving. So just understand where, we're all under this jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu umbrella, but there's freedom in that too, where schools do things differently. But yeah, I like that, where just checking in, but better late than never, right? I mean, we want you here. And so that means, I've had people ask me like, hey, I work till this time, especially when our fundamentals class was at 5:45. Hey, I work till 4:30 or 5:30. Maybe I have a messy job. I want to shower before I get here. I don't end up getting here till 5:55. Is that okay? Absolutely, man. I'd much rather have you here, vibing with everybody, being part of the group, than you just not being here. So if that means you're 10 minutes late and you missed the warm up, it is what it is, right? You'll probably be skipping it as a purple belt anyway. So
no, that's the one thing. If you show up because you're trying to skip my warm-ups, you're gonna hear about it, because I will chirp at people if you're just skipping it because you don't want to do it. That's where it's like, oh, okay, hold on. Well, if you're just skipping it to skip it, then I'm gonna chirp at you.
Yeah.
But if you've got a scheduling conflict or something like that, my opinion is I want you to get there early, because I want to see more people. And we've been doing some coaches meeting stuff where it's like a coach's corner. Like, hey, if you show up a little bit early, we'll answer some questions. We'll demo some extra techniques. Yeah. We'll help out with some people. So I want to encourage people to show up early, but it's also a carrot to make sure that you're on time.
Absolutely, right?
Because if everybody's on time, bang, I can start right at 6 and I get my whole class in, and I try to get to my perfect hour. But so I'm gonna try and lure you there a little bit early with some extra stuff. But if you're skipping my warm-ups, someone who shall remain nameless, you're going to hear about it.
Uh-oh. All right. So let me see here, man. I wrote down some notes. So anything else?
Man, so my approach is, and we started doing, so we have an advanced class. We've also been running at 6 o'clock. And, I love it when upper belts come to my fundamentals class, because I just love having more folks in there, and it's really helpful for me to have some upper belts in there. But we've also got an advanced class that runs at the same time, and we want to make sure that we've got, our upper belts have the opportunity to go and, get some additional reps on some of the advanced curriculum and stuff too. So some folks have asked me like, hey, which one should I go to? And I say, listen, if you're an upper belt, you should be prioritizing that advanced class, if at all possible. So there's sometimes it's absolutely nice for me to have an extra hand, especially if it's a larger class and I've got someone in there who's a blue belt or something like that. But more often than not, I've had some folks ask me like, hey, I don't want to get, I don't want there to be any weirdness. Like, no, don't worry about it. I don't take any offense to that whatsoever. Prioritize the training that is going to be best for you that day. It doesn't hurt my feelings at all if somebody goes over and does that training. Some folks have asked me about it. Trust me, there's no ill will whatsoever. I encourage people to come and train jiu-jitsu, and you get what you need that day.
I think where students maybe get confused about is what that fundamentals class is. So I heard this analogy a long time ago, and actually, it's kind of cheesy, right? So I heard you say this the other day, and I've absolutely used it. And, maybe you got it from me, but, when we teach, keeping your elbows tight to the center line, right? With like you got diamonds in your armpits, right? This cheeky thing we use to teach the kids, but it works for adults too, right? And so this analogy is the cookie jar analogy, right? And so what it is when you're a new student, that fundamentals class is the cookie jar, right? So you're going and you're taking cookies out of the cookie jar because you need them, right? And that's what that class is for. We're teaching you how to tie a belt. We're teaching you how to roll. We're teaching you how to fall properly. We're teaching you fundamental jiu-jitsu. Now, a lot of times, advanced students will come to that class and they'll want to get their cookies from that class. That's not your time to get cookies, right? That's your time as an advanced student, if you want to put cookies back in the cookie jar. Right. So to give back to those new students, absolutely come to that class, but understand that you're not training at that class. It's not for you. Right. There's a little bit of training at the end, right, where we go through some situational stuff and, but you're not going to get a sweat there. You're not going to be able to work on your game there. That's what the advanced class is for. So if you're coming in and you want to train or you want to learn some new stuff, maybe you want to practice some cool move you saw in Flow Grappling over the weekend, then that's the advanced class. But maybe you have a passion for helping people out, or maybe one of your friends is a white belt and you want to come and you want to give back to that class. Because typically how we do it in that class is we have people peel off, right? So we line up where most advanced students on one side, and then we go down to the least advanced students, and then we have the most advanced student paired up with the least. It's not always perfect, but that's how we try to do, because what we want is we want that most experienced person helping the least experienced person, giving them the tidbits, giving back to them. So, ask yourself before you come in, and there's no shame. There's certainly times where I'm a coach, But I've also come in on certain days and I said, I'm going to be selfish today where, I don't want to go to fundamentals class and help somebody else out. I came here for my own personal training because that's important as a coach too, right? Is to get your own personal development in. So something for you guys to ask yourself when you're going to those classes is, what am I trying to do today? Am I trying to be a helper? Am I maybe trying to be an assistant coach? Am I trying to show that I want to do that? Or is it something where, no, I came in to roll and I want to get my own jiu-jitsu in?
Yep. Oh, and that's kind of what's awesome about the timing of that class is you can come in and take the fundamentals class and help out, get a little bit of a warm up in, and then in level 2, stick around and train, or stick around for Bailey's class. For kind of the third class in that series. We've got people that come in and they'll do all 3 of those classes because maybe they can only come in 1 or 2 days a week, and or they're in college and they got nothing else better to do, so all right, we're gonna go do jiu-jitsu for 3.5 hours. Like, I'm extremely jealous of you, but go do that, because then you can get different looks, and mat time is mat time. So get on the mats and train.
Right. So I was going to go over school rules here, but in the idea of keeping it to an hour, we'll probably just save that for another podcast. But what I'd like to talk about is there was a question thrown out. I think it was either yesterday or the day before for the live feed. And the question was, as a white belt, what should I be focusing on, right? And you've been training for a long time. You're a purple belt. And you've been teaching for a significant amount of time where you kind of understand. You've probably actually seen a couple students that you maybe had for their first class who are blue belts now, are pretty dang close, right? So what should I, as a new student, as a white belt, be working on in the classes to get to that blue belt? Because that's at least the first goal, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, if somebody's coming in and they're like in their first week, or maybe they've got a couple stripes and they're like, hey, I just want to understand, like, am I doing the right things? I feel like I'm getting crushed a lot, or I'm feeling down about myself because I'm not making as progress as much as I think I should be. Or maybe somebody so-and-so started at the same time as me and they've got 3 stripes, I've only got 1. And how does that make me feel? They're all natural things, right?
Absolutely.
These are conversations that happen all the time.
Yeah.
And the thing that I tell people is, your jiu-jitsu journey is for you. Everything else is for everybody else. The most important competition that you have is with yourself. And when it comes to jiu-jitsu, you can't compare. Like, it's hard for me, and that's something I have to tell myself about, right? I'm turning 35. I am no spring chicken, and I'm trying to compete, at a relatively high level. And I'm also trying to make sure that I can handle people that come in that are 19 years old and in their athletic primes, and they would love to smash a purple belt. So I have to deal with that, and I have to realize that some days that's going to happen, and I got to deal with that, and I'm a purple belt. A white belt, the thing that I tell them is, like, you have to focus on your journey and your development, getting better. The mental side is probably one of the hardest parts of being a white belt. I think we talked about that on the last podcast. Like, the first 6 months is rough mentally. Your ego takes a beating, and that is by design. It is meant to file that stuff down, because and the only way that happens is through friction and difficult times, right? And everybody goes through it, and you have to be able to understand that you're going to progress, and if you keep showing up, that things will get better. They may not seem like it every day, and there's some days where you feel like you've regressed, but you just got to keep showing up. When it comes to techniques, I think we talked about it at the beginning. There's all sorts of content that's out there, and there's all sorts of flashy stuff. When you're a white belt, I think you should be focusing on your frames and your guard retention, and get some escapes in there too. But if you probably focus on the first 2 right away, like making sure that you understand, like, what structure is, like, understand the rules of jiu-jitsu, understand the positional hierarchy, so that you understand and can start to identify, like, when you're watching, do you know what's happening? Like, do you know what position? Do you understand? Yeah. Like, and that's some of the thing, like, I was talking to Mark, who came in, who's got, some wrestling background. He's like, can you help me understand, like, what's the rule? What are the rules of the game? Because I understand wrestling rules, but I understand jiu-jitsu rules. And so walking through the positional hierarchy and trying to explain, like, okay, if we're in this position, I'm in a more dominant position, and then the point system in competition rewards that. So just explaining the game, it helps people identify, and when they're watching, oh, I see what's happening. Oh, this person, they're in top half guard. This person's trying to pass their guard. If they do that, then they'll be set up for XYZ. Like, just understanding the rules, because it is very complicated in some respects, but it's very simple in other ways. Like, take them down, get past their legs, mount them, take the back, submit them. Like, you know, like it's like it can be very simple, but then it can get really, really detailed. So that's, and if you understand the positions, you understand what's going on, the things that I think people will find themselves and the solutions to their problems will usually be found in their frames and their guard retention. If those things fail, then you got to learn how to escape. If you can escape and retain your guard, okay, awesome. Now you can maybe start to think about doing some sweeps. Maybe think about, you know, going for some attacks or something like that. But you know, grip fighting, frame escapes, just frames and having good structure and things, and just understanding kind of the and trying stuff out and seeing what works and what doesn't. I think the people that can approach it like that will probably progress quicker. And you mentioned too, like, used to tease me with my little diary, my ever-present notebook. I usually have one of these not too far from me, because me personally, this is how I am. I take a lot of notes, and I take notes for coaching and setting up my classes, but I also take every class, every role, and I've been like that since I started jiu-jitsu, because it's how I learn. And I encourage people to do that too. It doesn't have to be much. You don't have to sit there and say, well, I felt like this, and then it really hurt my feelings when Matt smashed me in front of everybody and called me names. It's not like that. It's like objectively what happened. Like, what occurred? What was the result? What things should I be working on? Did something work that usually doesn't work? You know, those are the things that I write down, and it really has helped my retention, like just my memory retention, my recall. And that's it. And I encourage new folks to do that stuff too, because we throw so much at you, you know, at any given class, that it's probably hard to retain that. And if you can start to write some of that stuff down, I think it'll maybe advance how quickly you can retain that and put it into practice.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that's good advice. You know, I also have tons of notebooks that I write stuff down in, and you know, I think for new people, my advice, and I gave some advice on the live feed yesterday, but you know, if you're the fundamentals, they aren't sexy in the beginning, right? And so, you know, working on hipping out, working on framing, all that stuff, while it's wildly important, it's not a berimbolo. It's not taking somebody's back. It's not a flying triangle, right? And that's what we all pursue in the beginning. And I talked about that on the last podcast, you know, but the things that I find myself obsessing about now as a brown belt is the frames, the guard retention, you know, how to retain the guard, the transitioning between the guards. So I would say, you know, coming to class, giving class 100% focus, and just trying to improve. You know, it's what is it now? I think it's roughly, it kind of wavers depending upon, but it's right around an 18-week program for our fundamentals, right? And so you're going to see that program every 18 weeks. Well, over the course of a year, you're going to get pretty close to seeing that 3 times, right? Which is not lengthy, and some things repeat. But when you start seeing it that second time, trying to make it better. And then using that notebook. So let's say we do some training. Maybe we do some training in the first class, we go through situational, and you're having a hard time doing something, right? Write that down. And then that's a question you can ask the coach, or that's a question you can research later on your own. Or maybe you come to the second class, you've graduated to the second class, my class, the intermediate class, and we do some training at the end, and you're just getting stuck. You're getting stuck every time you try to do something, right? Or somebody's giving you the same reaction, or multiple people are giving you the same reaction. Write that down. That's something that's easy to go research on YouTube, right? Yep. And then it's not just you out there watching, you know, ridiculous stuff that looks good in a very contained environment when you have a passive partner, but it's stuff that actually works and it's going to bear fruit for you.
Yeah. Then, or like if somebody ankle picks you, then you can write it down, and then
I didn't need to write that down. I didn't need to write that down. It was in there. That haunted me.
That lipstick list of just like, Mark.
That's right. It didn't happen again, so now we know. I figured it out. But yeah, I mean, that's a great example where, man, that haunted me for a long time. And I went home. That was on a Sunday. I went home that night and I just started looking up different wrestling stuff and just researching stuff. And, ended up changing up my stance, just for that, that little piece. Right. And it was a journey down a rabbit hole that went from, all right, I need to be able to defend this, to, all right, I've kind of changed my takedown game to fit into my guard game. Right. Yep. And so that was all quality research because of one thing that happened, right? And there's a bunch of those examples. I was playing pummel underhook from half guard, right? And I don't know what the noon group is doing, but they must just do like off the top Kimuras all the time, because all those guys, as soon as you hit the pummel, they start reaching for your wrist to Kimura. And so one of the guys got me in it, right? And we kind of had this back and forth. I ended up escaping the position of the Kimura, but he ended up passing my guard. And, I think it was, pass the guard and we're done, right? So he ended up passing the guard with the Kimura. And I was like, man, that just can't happen. I can't have that, right? And so that led me, writing that down in my notebook saying, all right, I want to know about how to get out of the Kimura. And so now going through and researching that on YouTube. And YouTube isn't all great videos, right? A lot of times the gold, you gotta search for the gold, right? But man, I found some really good stuff on how to get out of that position, right? Or at least how to prevent that position going forward. And I've used it to success, in later roles. I would say, if you're going to geek out about anything, or if you're just like, man, I don't, because sometimes I come home, it's been a long week, I just want to be entertained. I want to watch something fun, pull up a Michael Musa Messi, pull up the, what's the Australian cat with the blonde hair from Unity?
Levi Jones Leary.
Levi Jones. Pull up Levi Jones. Pull up the Mayo brothers rolling around. I mean, go watch those guys' matches. That's something I love to do when I just want to be entertained and maybe I don't want to study it. I'm just kind of, I'm taxed from a long week, is watch those guys roll and watch what they're doing and get really obsessed with, the Barambola game, the De La Riva game, the reverse De La Riva game, the spider guard game. I mean, guys are getting crazy now where the game's evolving to where now we're combining the X guard and the De La Riva, or the spider with the X guard, right? Where we're using a lasso hook or a biceps spider hook and incorporating that in, where we're hybriding these guards, man. And it's really cool. So geeking out about that stuff, we're like, okay, cool. What is that? All right. What happens when we're training and somebody does a split squat or maybe puts a knee up and I feed in that deep De La Riva hook? Let's see how weird we can get here. And that's what's fun about jiu-jitsu, is when you can start experimenting and you maybe get that first sweep, and I think you and I talked about this and maybe this was your first experience with leg locks. I don't remember, but that first time, and I talk about this all the time, don't watch somebody do jiu-jitsu to you, right?
Yeah.
But it happens all the time. It happens all the time in the beginning, right? But you can kind of get that where in the beginning, right, like two white belts rolling and one of them feeds that deep De La Riva hook. And the other one's like, oh, okay, I don't know what's happening right now.
What are you doing?
And they're watching you do jiu-jitsu to them. And it's kind of this surreal thing where they're not resisting you because they don't know what's happening. And you're like, oh, this is the power of jiu-jitsu, right? That's why, a smaller person can be successful. It's because now I have a knowledge that you don't know about. And vast majority of the time, when I came into jiu-jitsu, I had to unteach myself a lot of just American male things, right? Simple example of that is the bench press, right? Somebody comes in close to me, I push them away. Works really well when we're standing, but when we're on the ground and I extend my arms like that to push you away, now you just broke my arm, right? And there's a lot of movements like that where if somebody doesn't know, and I just have, 6 months to a year knowledge of jiu-jitsu, I can really, really hurt you, right? Because you haven't untrained yourself.
Yep. Well, and it's funny to watch that stuff happen. Like,
absolutely.
I tell this story. So when I first started training, one of my favorite training partners was our friend Ann Brooks, who's down in Colorado. And Ann was like a 4-stripe white belt when I first started and got her blue belt. Like,
aggressive though. She was good.
So she's very good and she's very technical. And she used to do this thing. She called it the Sneezekiel. It's basically like where you're feeding an arm triangle and then your back, the hand on the backside sneaks the Ezekiel choke in so you don't see it coming. And she did that to me. And I was just like, what the hell was that? And she's like, oh, it's this Ezekiel. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then I saw her do that. And I've told her this story multiple times. I saw her do that to some guy who was like a college, not a college football player, but like he said he played like high level Minnesota A football or something like that. Big burly dude. And it's like, just, he kind of comes in and it's just like, he's just bench press gooning people is what we call it, right?
Yeah.
And I got to watch that guy's life change because Ann passes guard like nothing and sets him up, hits a Sneezekiel, and that guy's like, ah! And then I got to see his face afterwards. He was just like, what the hell just happened? Like, he didn't know what happened. And I was just like, oh, you're somebody different now because you thought that your athleticism was going to get you through this and you're going to get through this class like nothing's going to happen. And, she's like 115 pounds and, there's a huge size discrepancy, but you got to see the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu like just right there. I'm just like, no, if you know the rules of the game and you have the technique, you can win. Right. And I love that story because you got to see it happen. We're just like, yep, there it is. That's why jiu-jitsu works.
Did you ever see that guy again?
No, he's gone.
Oh yeah, because it messed with him. He's still messed up. Yeah. He's still messed up. He's probably
see you guys later.
He's probably talking to a shrink right now about that. Good stuff. All right, man. What else? What else do we got to know about your class?
Man, so my thing is I want people to have a good time. I want them to learn jiu-jitsu and I want people to love jiu-jitsu as much as I do, because that's kind of my big goal is if you come to my class and you're excited about coming to class and you feel like that was a good use of your time, then I've succeeded in my job. And I feel like I've represented the intent of what we want to do as an academy by doing that. If you feel like there's things that would help you or help other people, like, hey, if it would be more helpful if you explained it like this, or if, hey, this made sense to me, maybe this will be helpful to someone else, always let me know about that stuff. Pull me aside, like very accessible. If you got questions about things anytime after class, or, if you're thinking about coming to class and maybe you're not a student yet, but you're like, hey, I want to learn more, like ping us on the Facebook page or anything like that. Like, we're extremely accessible, always willing to, we want to be able to answer your questions and, help remove those barriers to entry to help get you on the mats and to make sure that that's a fun experience. And, that's the biggest thing is just increase your mat time. And if it's 0, come to class. If it's just a little bit, come to class. If you haven't been there in a long time, come to class. There's some people that I haven't beat up in a long time and have gotten beat up by in a long time, and I miss you guys. So just come to class, and that's the thing is like the quarantine stuff that's going on, like nobody can train right now. But for any of you guys that are out there listening, if you haven't been training even before this, when we open up, you come to class, like come train. Like everybody's got excuses and nobody has time and they got this, they got that. Yeah. Come to class. It will be better. You will, like, I've never once regretted coming to a jiu-jitsu class. Not once. Never.
Yeah, certainly there's been times where, like work will drain me, or, maybe I've had a bad week, or, whatever. And man, it's every time I go, it's, maybe I start out, I'm a little tired, maybe I'm a little grumpy, but just being around everybody, teaching jiu-jitsu, getting to roll and train a little bit, it always brings me in a better mood. 100%. And like you said, what I tell people is, at least in the beginning, at some point you are going to have to change who you are, right, to progress in jiu-jitsu, right? Very few people make it all the way to black belt with everything they came in the door with. You're going to have to change as a person. But majority of the time, just coming in, being consistent, having a good effort, giving a good effort, having a great attitude, right, is going to take you so far, right? And I say this a lot is, you guys are going to be somewhere in a year, right? A year to 2 years. So average time for a purple belt is right around that 18 months. All right, not purple belt. Average time for a blue belt is right around 18 months. Some get it sooner. Some it takes a little bit longer. And but what it is, in 18 months, you're going to be somewhere, right? Why not be a blue belt at Fargo BJJ? How cool would that be? Yeah. And all it is showing up 2 to 3 times a month, or 2 to 3 times a week for 18 months, right?
Right.
It's nothing crazy. Just show up. We'll take care of the rest, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing is there's no other additional stuff you have to do.
No.
There's no, like, you don't have to go through a whole strength and conditioning program. You don't have to go do this. You don't do that. Just show up. Come to class.
Yeah.
Like if you do some of those other things, yeah, maybe they'll help, but they're not required. Like
I don't. Yeah, and that's certainly something for a future episode. I don't necessarily think those things make your jiu-jitsu better, right? They just make you more resilient so you can do more jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and and again that goes back to, like you said, just come to class, right? Well, okay, I'm a year older than you. I'm 36, and I was getting beat up, and I think it's probably been 3-4 years now where I would go to class 4 times, 5 times a week, and I was like, man, I can't sustain this. And that's when I started getting into more strength and conditioning, more yoga, because that made it where it's like, okay, now because of those things, I can do class 4 to 5 times a week, no problem.
Yep.
Right.
Well, yeah, and like when I've had the opportunity to go train, one of the places that I absolutely love going to is Robert Drysdale's in Las Vegas, and in his competition class, he's got some world beaters in his gym. He tells them the exact same thing. He says, just show up.
Yeah.
I get it. Sure. You're always there's going to be injuries. There's going to be all sorts of reasons that you can't come to class. Just show up.
Right.
And he's telling that to people that are preparing for major like world level competition. It's the same messaging for people that are hobbyists that just want to come in and try a class. Show up.
Just show up.
Come to class.
Yeah. We'll take care of the rest. Yeah. All right, man. What have you been doing? We've got about an hour and 15.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right. Let's close it out. You got anything you want to say?
No, other than thank you guys for listening.
Absolutely.
This is what Matt and I would be doing anyway, just with a little extra technology and some recording. But we appreciate you guys listening. We're trying to fill the void in our lives of the Matt chatter and not being able to train with a lot of different things. So Professor George has put out some information. We're trying to get some new online content, some on-demand stuff, some live stuff. We're doing Q&As. We're doing these podcasts. We're just trying to put some stuff out there, one, to fill the void in our lives, but also give you guys something to amuse yourselves while we're also in the lockdown here for what looks like the next few weeks. If there's things that are interesting to you, if you've got questions, other things, we're actively looking for stuff to fill this content. So you let us know.
Absolutely.
Follow along the Fargo BJJ Facebook page, our tribe page. If you haven't gone already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel so we can get above that 1,000 subscribers, so we can do some live stuff on there too. Other than that, man, just that's it. Keep clicking. Keep clicking. Yeah. Keep. I don't know. Send me some jokes. Send me some good memes. I don't know.
Yeah, let us know what you guys want to hear about. Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.